In order to understand how fibromyalgia can be so painful or cause so many different unexplained symptoms, it's important to understand how the brain normally processes messages from nerves. Let's start with the brain. The brain can broadly be divided into two different categories, a conscious part and an unconscious part. The conscious part is what you understand and understand the world around you and interact with people and things. And the subconscious part is what does the day-to-day background running of your body. It's why you don't have to think about how fast your heart needs to beat. It's why you don't need to remember to breathe. The conscious part of the brain is very focused on what you're concentrating on at the time and often only needs the information relevant to it at that point in time. The subconscious part of the brain has a broad range of what it does. But what's really important in pain is that it filters out messages that are important for the conscious part of the brain, whilst filtering out the messages that aren't relevant for the conscious part of the brain. If we had no filter and our conscious part of our brain had to process all the messages from the nerves all the time, our brains would be overwhelmed and we'd really struggle to function. It's this subconscious part of the brain that plays such an important role in fibromyalgia. Let's talk about how things normally work. Nerves send messages from whatever part of the body they're located in to the brain, and they're doing this all the time. Our subconscious part of our brain looks at all of these messages that come in and identifies whether it's important for us at that time or whether it's just routine messaging and can be put to one side. If it's important, it'll get prioritised and it'll be sent through to the conscious part of the brain, and we then become aware of the message that's come from that nerve. In a normal setting, this might be, for example, if you're thinking about a sock that's particularly uncomfortable or scratchy, or if you're just sitting at the table and you've stubbed your toe underneath it. This would give a painful experience. You'd identify it to be in your foot or your toe, and you'd look down and see what's happened. This is how it's supposed to work. However, messages that aren't relevant for you at that time, maybe for example, trousers you're wearing or a top you're wearing, they get edited out. You're not aware of them unless you particularly think about them, at which point the subconscious part of the brain realizes that you're thinking about that part of the body and will send your conscious part of your brain messages so that you can understand what's happening about it. These messages that the subconscious part of the brain put to one side are a bit like put on a desk for filing later. Let's call the subconscious part of the brain a middle manager. Let's call the conscious part of the brain a senior manager. During the day, your middle manager and your unconscious part of your brain is doing a lot of work filtering out messages that aren't relevant for you at that time. You don't even know this is happening. You don't even realise it's happening. But these messages that the middle manager has put to one side are like little slips of paper with a message on them. And they put them on the desk, and then these messages are looked at later. The important thing is when the subconscious looks at this is when you're in a deep quality sleep. So when you sleep deeply, the subconscious part of your brain goes through the messages it's filtered out during the day and identifies the messages that it got wrong or right and calibrates itself so that it keeps working in an efficient and optimal way. When you wake up the next day feeling refreshed, the process starts again. Now, what can happen in fibromyalgia is if you've had chronic sleep disturbance for many weeks, months or years, is that middle manager never gets the full amount of time it needs to sort through all those messages it's put to one side during the day. This means that when you wake up the next day feeling unrefreshed, having not had a good night's sleep again, the middle manager starting the day, instead of having a clear desk of messages ready to sort, it has a desk that's gradually getting piled higher and higher with messages it hasn't managed to go through from the previous day, week, month or even year. What this means is that the middle manager becomes less effective at doing its job. This means that as the new messages from the day start coming through and it has to filter through and identify which ones are important and which ones are not, it doesn't do it so well. And it starts becoming overwhelmed and overworked. Imagine the desks now covered in bits of paper from messages it hasn't yet sorted. More messages are coming through the door. Like any one of us, it starts feeling overwhelmed. And what it does is, to be on the safe side, is it starts sending more messages through to the senior manager, the conscious part of your brain. This is because it doesn't want to miss anything. So it sends the messages through, maybe inappropriately, messages that otherwise would have been a little ache or a niggle or a pain get sent through as a high priority pain message to the conscious part of the brain. The senior manager, if you like, who's sitting in the conscious part of the brain, gets that message from the middle manager, looks at it, and gives you an experience of pain because it thinks it's been filtered and appropriately triaged as being a painful message. This means that you start experiencing pain in parts of your body that when you look at them, you might not see anything wrong with them. Or it might be that you've had a minor ache or a minor pain that gets upregulated to a very severe pain. Now, the conscious part of the brain doesn't realise that the subconscious part of the brain is being overworked. It doesn't realise that the filtering system isn't working so well. So it gives you the sensation of the pain that it's been told to give. This is why it can seem like the pain volume can gradually increase over time, or you can start getting aches and pains from parts of the body that just don't make sense. Parts of the body that you haven't really overexerted or mainly only had a minor injury to that feel excruciating or agonising. It's why the skin can start feeling very sensitive to touch, even light touch. The problem can then be is that if these symptoms start occurring at night time, they can themselves start disturbing sleep, which can feed into the problem of your middle manager in your subconscious part of your brain not having enough time to filter through all those messages that it's already got on the desk. Over time, these messages can become more and more frequent from the middle manager up to the senior manager in the conscious part of the brain that the senior manager starts getting overworked. In order to help it, it sometimes recruits other parts of the brain close to it to help process these extra messages that are coming through. These can include parts of the brain, including memory, and can lead to things like brain fog or mood, and lead to things like depression. So it's important to understand that sleep and deep quality sleep are central to how fibromyalgia starts happening.